Welcome to all. SV Union High School and Junior College, Pune, Economics, Standard 12th. Presented by Dr. Inderjeet Kaur Ahluwalia. Chapter 4, Supply Analysis, Part 2. Law of Supply. Introduction. The law of supply was introduced by Professor Alfred Marshall in his book Principles of Economics, which was published in 1890. The law explains the functional relationship between price and quantity supplied. Statement of the law. Other things being constant, higher the price of a commodity, more is the quantity supplied, and lower the price of a commodity, less is the quantity supplied. In simple words, other factors remaining constant, a rise in price results in a rise in the quantity supplied and vice versa. Thus, there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. Symbolically, Sx is equal to small f into brackets Px close the bracket, where S stands for supply, X stands for commodity, F stands for function, and P stands for price of commodity. Therefore, Sx is equal to function of price. The law of supply can be better explained with the help of the schedule and diagram. Supply schedule. The table explains the direct relationship between price and quantity of commodity supplied. When price rises from rupees 10 to 20, 30, 40 and 50, the supply also rises from 100 to 200, 300, 400 and 500 units respectively. It means when price rises, supply also rises, and when price falls, supply also falls. Thus, there is direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. This can be seen in the following diagram. Supply curve. In the figure, x-axis represents quantity supplied and y-axis represents the price of the commodity. Supply curve SS slopes upwards from left to right, which has a positive slope. It indicates a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. Assumptions of the law. The law of supply is based on the following assumptions. First, constant cost of production. Second, constant technique of production. Third, no change in weather conditions. Fourth, no change in government policy. Fifth, no change in transport cost. Sixth, prices of other goods remain constant. And seventh, no future expectations. Let us understand each assumption. First, constant cost of production. It is assumed that there is no change in the cost of production. A change in cost of production will affect the profits of the seller. Therefore, less quantity will be supplied at the same price. Second, constant technique of production. It is also assumed that technique of production does not change. Improved technique of production may lead to an increase in production. This in turn may lead to an increase in the supply at the same price. Third, no change in weather conditions. It is assumed that there is no change in the weather conditions. Natural calamities like floods, earthquakes, etc. may decrease supply. Fourth, no change in government policy. It is also assumed that government policies like taxation policy, trade policy, etc. remain unchanged. Fifth, no change in transport cost. It is assumed that there is no change in the condition of transport facilities and transport cost. For example, better transport facility increases supply at the same price. Sixth, prices of other goods remain constant. Prices of other goods are assumed to remain constant. If they change, the law of supply may not hold true because producer may transfer resources to other products. And seventh, no future expectations. The law also assumes that the sellers do not expect future changes in the price of the product. Exceptions to the law of supply. The law of supply states higher the price of a commodity, more is the quantity supplied, and lower the price of a commodity, less is the quantity supplied. An exception to the law would mean higher the price of a commodity, less is the quantity supplied, and lower the price of a commodity, more is the quantity supplied. Such exceptional cases are: first, supply of labor; second, agricultural goods; third, urgent need for cash; fourth, perishable goods; and fifth, rare goods. Let us see how each point is an exception to the law of supply. First, supply of labor. Labor supply is the total number of hours that workers work at a given wage rate. It is represented graphically by a supply curve. In case of labor, as the wage rate rises, the supply of labor, that is hours of work, would increase. So, supply curve slopes upward. Supply of labor, that is hours of work, falls with a further rise in wage rate, and the supply curve of labor bends backward. This is because the worker would prefer leisure to work after receiving higher amount of wages. Thus, after a certain point, when wage rate rises, the supply of labor tends to fall. This can be explained with the help of a labor supply schedule and a backward bending supply curve. In the figure, supply of labor, that is hours of work, is shown on x-axis and wage rate per hour is shown on the y-axis. The curve SAS' represents backward bending supply curve of labor. Initially, when the wage rate is rupees 100 per hour, the hours of work is 5. The total amount of wages received is rupees 500. When wage rate rises from rupees 100 to 200, hours of work will also rise from 5 hours to 7 hours, and total amount of wages would also rise from rupees 500 to rupees 1400. At this point, laborer enjoys the highest amount, that is rupees 1400, and works for 7 hours. If wage rate rises further from rupees 200 to rupees 300, total amount of wages may rise, but the laborer will prefer leisure time and denies to work for extra hours. Thus, he is ready to work only for 6 hours. At the point A, the supply curve bends backward, which becomes an exception to the law of supply. Second point of exception is agricultural goods. The law of supply does not apply to agricultural goods as they are produced in a specific season and their production depends on weather conditions. Due to unfavorable changes in weather, if the agricultural production is low, their supply cannot be increased even at a higher price. Point number 3. Urgent need for cash. If the seller is in urgent need for hard cash, he may sell his product at which may even be below the market price. Fourth, perishable goods. In case of perishable goods, the supplier would offer to sell more quantities at lower prices to avoid losses. For example, vegetables, eggs, etc. And the fifth exception is rare goods. The supply of rare goods cannot be increased or decreased according to its demand. Even if the price rises, supply remains unchanged. For example, rare paintings, old coins, antique goods, etc. Thus, this explains the law of supply along with assumptions and exceptions. Thank you.